Hi, I'm Tina Schaefer from the York Songwriters Circle, and we're here today at Universal Decca Records to film A&R Senior Vice President Dave Novik. And Dave has a long and winding road of history of working with some of the top bands in the business today, including NSYNC, Dave Matthews, Wham, Bruce Hornsby, the list goes on and on and on, and he's going to be talking to you a little bit about some of the people that he's worked with, the great and late Chris Whitley as well. And he's also going to talk to us a little bit about where he sees the industry heading and what he looks for in signing a band today, and where just the record business is in his opinion, what's happened to it and where he sees it going. It's really, really going to be educational. He's been in the business for 25, 30 years, and he's somebody really to listen to. So we hope you enjoy it, and this is the Songwriters Circle saying, enjoy the blog. Bye. One of the questions I've never asked you all these years I've known you is, how did you get started in the music business? Were you originally a musician?
I'm actually a failed musician, is what I am. I was summarily thrown out of the band I was in because I really couldn't play. I mean, that's how bad it was. We hadn't actually played anything, but they just knew I was so bad.
What did you play?
I was trying to play guitar. I wanted to be the bass player. Anyway, so I took lessons, and I was an abject failure at that. So I channeled that into being a DJ. When I was younger, I was DJing in my school, you know, in lunch hours, and then I took that and became a local DJ in my local town, and then took that on the road and became a DJ doing, you know, nights at weddings, parties, bar mitzvahs, you know, things like that. So, but what I got out of that was interesting sort of knowledge of finding music that worked on clubs and dance floors. And this was a long time ago, so we're talking about very different kind of music than the clubs that we know about today. But anyway, that I was able to parlay that into working initially in a very small independent company in London, in the UK, as an office boy, and that led me to being involved in A&R because it was a tiny company. Everyone was doing everything, so I went out and checked out bands at night eventually, and was able to find some things that I wanted to sign, and they let me pick up a couple of projects, and one of the first act I signed actually became a hit band. They were called Bad Manners. It was a ska band. I got offered jobs at different labels, but eventually I moved to what was CBS, which is now Sony, and then that kind of brought me to America, because I was at CBS in London working with everybody from Psychedelic Furs to I signed a band called Hanoi Rocks. I signed a band called Prefab Sprout. I eventually was the A&R guy for Paul Young, the singer that had a really big record with Wherever I Lay My Hat in the UK, and then eventually, after I had left and went to America, he became successful here with Every Time You Go Away.
Every Time You Go. Were you part of that record?
That record I wasn't. I was at his first record, which was No Parlay, it was called.
It's a huge 80s record.
Yeah.
Huge.
Oh yeah.
Huge.
Yeah.
So anyway, I was working at CBS, had a few projects that did quite well, and then eventually they offered me a chance to come to America, and that's how I started getting into the sort of international world, because I came from the UK to the US to work for CBS Records International, and I was essentially picking up projects from all over the world and putting it out in the US through different CBS labels, Epic, Columbia, whichever label happened to be the most interested. And that was everybody working all across the board, everyone from, at the time it was George Michael, and it was, and Wham, and Sade, and some of those great early 80s, mid-80s kinds of artists.
Yeah.
And then that took me into the international world, where I started getting, I started working with bands. For instance, I worked with Men at Work, who had come off of that massive Down Under hit, and then I worked with Nina Hagen from Germany, and then I worked peripherally a little bit with Leonard Cohen and a little bit with Julio Iglesias. So it gave me a really interesting overview of the international marketplace. And then CBS asked me if I wanted to go to Australia to check out that company and the country to see if it would be something I'd be interested in doing there. So I went to the country. I spent a month in Australia checking out the business that was down there, trying to get an understanding of it. And when I came back, they offered me a job as head of A&R for CBS Australia, which I took. And at the time, I didn't know how or what the end result would be, but we ended up having some pretty big, significant successes with bands like Noiseworks and Wah Wah Nee and a number of other projects that I was involved with. Probably the pinnacle of that was working on Midnight Oil's album Diesel and Dust, which had the Worldwide Smash Beds Are Burning on it, which was an amazing story, and there's plenty of story to that, but nonetheless it was a really amazing experience working with that band, who to this day is still one of the greatest rock bands ever in my opinion.
Yeah.
So that was a great experience, which led me back to Epic in Los Angeles, and that's when I got involved with working for Don Grierson and Dave Glue and Tommy Mottola and that team. Yeah, it was a great experience, and you know, I wasn't there very long because Tommy had asked me to come to New York. At Epic, I'd been involved with the signing of Indigo Girls and Social Distortion and Alice Cooper and Billy Joel to Judy Collins to, I signed Chris Whitley, the blues guitar player.
I had to tell you, I just have to say this because Chris Whitley, for all of those of you in the whole wide world that don't know, the late Chris Whitley is probably one of the greatest artists, musicians, a genius.
Yeah, unsung almost.
And the fact that you worked with him, I mean, oh my, please tell us a little bit about that. He is truly one of the greatest.
Well, it was one of those classic bidding war situations where Kathleen Carey had signed him to Sony Publishing, and he had this incredible style. He played dobro guitar with open tuning, so it was a completely unique sound.
Totally unique.
He had this completely, I didn't really understand it then, but I understand it more now than I did then, but he used a vocal style that was very much based on the blues, but with a bluegrass phrasing. It was really interesting. And then eventually he signed to Columbia amidst massive competition from everybody else, but he and I just hit it off. We had a great relationship.
Sure, yeah.
And it was a really exciting project to be involved with. I went down to the studio, spent a lot of time in New Orleans, where Malcolm Byrne put most of his time in working in Daniel Lanois' Kingsway studio. That's where the record was made.
Lucky
yeah, it was a great experience.
Brilliant.
I got to know New Orleans, which I hadn't been to before. And then, so the Malcolm project ended up, I think, being a pretty stunning record, and they delivered the album Living with the Law, and it was just a really great,
Unique talent.
honest, completely.